Hi everyone. Today I'd like to talk to you about how to put together a technical resume. Now, a tech resume is going to be what's considered a skill-based resume rather than a more traditional business resume. So I have a sample resume that you can see on the screen right now, and I've used all junk information on here, so please make sure you don't copy any of this. You're going to need to write your own based on your own skills and your own background. Some of the first things that you want to pay attention to with a resume is going to be things like making sure that you have your name on the resume and it's large enough to be read really easily. So you're going to want to make that much larger, both font and find other ways to draw attention to it. In general, for resumes, especially in technology, you want to keep it a little bit more basic. You don't want to start getting fancy with different colors or pictures. Don't include a selfie here. You're not going to want to go for odd fonts or anything either. You want to keep it relatively simple. Size 12 font for most of it is a reasonable minimum. Regular boundaries and borders are reasonable. Your resume should never be more than one page, and you want to stick to a white background with black font. Now, with your resume, you can see what comes after the first name and last name is some contact information. Now, you are going to want to include at least an email address and a phone number. Your email address, you can create a separate one and do something like a Gmail or Yahoo or something like that just for jobs. If you're going to be aiming for a job and finding that job using something like a public board like monster.com type of thing, having a separate email address and a separate phone number is actually a good idea to protect yourself a little bit so that you're not accidentally sharing more information than you want to. There are several services that can give you temporary email addresses and temporary phone numbers. The next line that you can see here is that I'm highlighting right here is a line that's going to include some information about your social media and potentially your portfolio. It is worth having a LinkedIn page. LinkedIn is a social network for businesses, usually people getting a job. That's a good way to get a job. So it's worth spending a little bit of time working on your LinkedIn page. Make sure that you update the URL for your LinkedIn page so that it's your name. And LinkedIn has a way to do that. You can Google a tutorial, it's pretty straightforward. Especially if you are a programmer, but if you are an IT or networking security person, it is worth having a GitHub. Now, you will probably create a GitHub in at least one of your classes, but if you don't, then you can create it on your own. And this is a good way to showcase your programming and scripting skills. If you have any other business focused social media, for example, Twitter, you can include that as well. Now, you want to make sure that this is business focused. So, Twitter is actually a very popular social media, especially in the security world. A lot of people make a lot of connections through Twitter, and it's worth creating a Twitter account for that reason alone. If you have another professional social media, you can include that. I would not recommend including like a personal Facebook or personal Instagram. Now, the first thing that makes a tech resume slightly different than a traditional resume is we don't have a summary or objective paragraph. There's a couple exceptions where you could make one if you wanted to, but in general, a good rule is don't do that. Start with your skills. Because we are in a skill based industry, most companies and employers are going to first and foremost care about what you can do. For your skills, you can make a list of your skills and then give some variety of description for that skill. Now, for some of these, I have used the example that you can see here of programming language. not everybody is necessarily going to have a programming language skill, and that's completely fine. I only use this as an example. You want to break your skills down into overarching topics. You can kind of think about the classes that you've taken. For example, maybe you have a programming language skill, or a scripting skill, a networking skill, security skill, communication skill. All of those are going to be the sort of overarching thing, and then you would have a description so that you can tell somebody a little bit about what you can do with that skill. For example, let's say we're talking about programming and you know Python. Well, you wouldn't want to just list, I know Python, because that's not really descriptive. What you would want to do instead is talk about what you can do with Python. For example, if you've taken programming for IT, then you should know a little bit about Python and you should have had a big project that you've written in Python. So you should be able to reasonably say things like, able to write a project such as blank using Python, incorporated libraries such as Beautiful Soup to be able to create blank project. This is true for Java, C, C++, and you want to have your skills ordered so that the skill on the top is the one that you would be most interested in getting a job for. For example, if you are a computer science student, you're probably going to want to have at least one language at the top, whether that's Java, C, or C++. If you are almost through with your computer science degree, you're probably going to want to have a Java skill and a C skill, maybe a C/C++ skill, and you'd want those two to be at the top. Let's say, however, you're a networking security student and you really despise programming. Then perhaps you don't want to put that at the top. What you want to have as your top skill is networking and your second skill as security, or the other way around. And those are the skills that are what you are most interested in pursuing. Another recommendation that I have for this is think about having a resume that is longer than a page, that you cut down to a page based off of the job that you are applying for. So perhaps you have a networking skill, a security skill, some programming skills, a communication skill. Well, most of you are likely to have some Microsoft Office skills and basic technical IT skills. They might not be worth putting on a resume if you are going for, say, a programming position or a security analyst position, but they might be worth putting on there if you're going for a help desk position. So one of the things that you can do is have more skills on there that you've sort of approved and given a lot of thought to, and then just cut some off based on the job description so you can tailor your resume to the job a little bit better. For all of the skills, you want to make sure that you are descriptive about what you can do with that skill. For networking, make sure that you are descriptive about what you can do with your networking skill. Think about the labs that you've done in class, the projects that you've worked on, personal projects that you've done, things like that. So you could say things like, networking, able to use Windows Server 2008 and 2012, including able to create some small PowerShell scripts, able to use Active Directory, able to do user management, change passwords, able to create DHCP pools. All of those projects that you've done are really good things to include for your skills. Then we're going to go into experience. Now, this is the middle portion of your resume. Experience is the previous jobs that you've had. Now, don't worry about previous jobs having to be in technology. It's completely fine if your previous jobs were not in technology. What you want to think about for these jobs, however, is the transferable skills. So if you had a job, let's say retail, that's a really popular job for people to have early on in their careers. You don't so much want to focus on the retail portion of the job. You want to focus on your customer service skills for the job. For example, able to de-escalate situations, able to be on time for work and highly requested as a stocking buddy for the store. Able to create a happy working environment by doing blank. So you want to have some specific transferable skills. Like if you can drive a forklift, cool, but if you're not getting a job driving a forklift, that's probably not as useful as people want you to be on their shift with them because they know that you drive the forklift responsibly and you have the lowest accident rate in the building. That's the kind of thing that you want to put on here. So I've obviously used a very silly example with Cthulhu from H.P. Lovecraft. And what I'm focusing on is obviously not the, if you take away the silly part, what I'm focusing on is the fact that I have organized things. I have increased worship with a very clear 20%. And these are more concrete things that I have pretend done for this pretend job. And you can list all of your jobs like that, and then you can include the dates that you've worked there. The last thing that you want to have at the bottom of the resume is your education and any awards or certificates or certifications that you have. So you have probably an Associate's of Science or a Bachelor's of Science, and then you want to list the specific degree that you are getting. If you aren't sure the specific name, you can look it up. You don't want to just say Associate of Science, Computer Science. You want to say Associate of Science, CIS, Computer Science, or CIS, Networking and Security. You can specify where you happen to be getting your degree from, and then you want to say your expected graduation date. You don't necessarily want to advertise how long you've taken to get your degree. You want to give them an idea of where you are in the degree so that they can figure out if you are, for example, a first semester freshman or a last semester senior, as it were. So if you have an expected graduation date of, say, December 2020, then that's going to have a different expectation than if you have a graduation date of December 2021. So that gives people a better idea of where you are in the degree and the expectations that they have for you. Now, for this resume, for all resumes, you want to make sure that you are not going over the page. So you can see on my sample resume, I haven't gone over the page. I've paid close attention to the sort of visual appeal of the resume in that it is easy, even at this far away, to be able to see the first name and the last name and the space that I've spent on skills, experience, and education. And you can see that the education real estate is the smallest, and then the skills and experience, those can switch depending on where you are in your degree and how many other jobs that you've had. Please let me know if you have any questions.